Hello, 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 and welcome back. 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene's masterful work, a discussion series. Hold on, do I have the background music still going? Oh, no, wait, I have that. There we go. Hi, everybody. Evening, Claire, who is actually on time and ready for this law. I'm almost mostly on time and mostly ready for this law, despite its name. And despite my description saying I have almost no plan, I had a few moments to get prepared. Shilomania! Good to see you. Let's see, are we live on the rumbling side? I see Cat Ninja, first onesies, and Mr. Squabob over there on the Rumble side. I know that there's a Rumble studio that I need to learn how to use at some point. But yeah, no sports ball tonight, Mr. First One Shot, so all here for the business. Oh, there's Mr. First One Shot on the YouTube side. Good to see you. There is not a puppy bowl squabob that I'm aware of. There will be a sports playing since we're not quite started just yet. There will be a sports ball playing during my normal time slot. Monday night will be the national championship game. I'm going to ask you guys in chat, and I'm also going to do it as a poll on Twitter and as a poll on my community tab, if I should go ahead and just skip Monday night or move it to a different time. And I'll give a couple of different potential times, see if we could still do Monday's Law at a different hour, because I don't want to interrupt the show for the national championship game, but there's no chance I'm missing that national championship game. So we can either just skip it or we can go ahead and reschedule it for some other more appropriate time. And I'll give a couple of options. But anyway, tonight we do something that throughout history is extremely, extremely rare. We're going to talk about doing something. We're not actually going to do it, but we are going to talk about Law 29, which seems almost preposterous to me in its very concept. Plan all the way to the end. And what does that mean? Anybody? Anybody know why this is a rare concept? How do you know where the end is? How can you plan all the way to the end if you don't know where the end of your plan is? Hello, Kitty. Good to see ya. And as I was reading this earlier, because I did go ahead and plan all the way to the end, at least of this law, mostly because I was really curious. I don't plan well, just in general. I sort of tend to be on team improvise and not on team planning. Hello, Bijou. Good to see you. Hmm. Because people live for the day and don't prepare for the future. Largely, thirsty. Uh, hold on, let me see if I can figure out how to damn get to the. Hmm. Hmm. I, I'm gonna have to watch a video on this later. But first one shot does have a bit of the way of it. The judgment is as follows, and this law itself is it's not it's not entirely long. There's a there's a bit here. Huh, for no reason. On the YouTube side, not on the Rumble side. Interesting. For no reason is someone from the Rumble streets though, so I think from the Rumble streets. Anyway, the judgment is as follows. The ending is everything. Plan all the way to it, taking into account all the possible consequences, obstacles, and twists of fortune that might reverse your hard work and give the glory to others. By planning to the end, you will not be overwhelmed by circumstances and you will know when to stop. Gently guide fortune and help determine the future by thinking far ahead. Now this part when I was interpreting this knowing when to stop concept, because let's face it, we can't take into account, maybe at some point in history you could take into account every every damn possible consequence, but that seems unreasonable because most people don't understand this concept, the where to stop, when to stop. And if you think about the most ambitious people, the people that continuously make the news cycle, they all seem to have that one thing in common. They don't know when to stop. Like you look at the big three guys, like the Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musk. They just keep doing and doing, and it's almost like there's no real goal. They just do for the sake of doing. They don't have any damn idea when to stop. And then you look at like political aspirations, these things manifest there. Like nobody's cool with being county dog catcher. Everybody wants to be president. But what do you do after you've been president? Like, where do you go from there? Whew, sinister, sinister things afoot after that spot. But then I'm trying to think about like anyone, any case scenario I can see where someone had a very clear plan, they executed their plan, and then they just fucking stopped. Like, okay, we accomplished this. Like, look at social justice warriors. Like, once upon a time, it was like getting women the right to vote, but they couldn't stop there. And now we're in clown world where women are men and men are women and everything is all fucked. And it's like, well, you didn't look too far ahead, did you? You did not plan this all the way to the fucking end. It's 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 quite remarkable actually if you look at how many damn examples that yeah, they keep making more plans, exactly. It's like a government solution. There's nothing quite so permanent as a temporary government solution because they just keep building and compounding onto it. Ugh. But I can't think of a damn good example where someone like set out to do something like notable and then stopped. That ambition just was culled because most people just know no end to it. They have no plan for it. So let's get into just what this looks like. The endlessly ambitious transgression of the law. In 1510, a ship, a ship set out from the island of Hispaniola, now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, for Venezuela, where it was to rescue a besieged Spanish colony. Several miles out of port, a stowaway climbed out of a provision chest. Vasco Nunez de Balboa, a noble Spaniard who had come to the New World in search of gold, but had fallen into debt and had escaped his creditors by hiding in the chest. Balboa had been obsessed with gold ever since Columbus had returned to Spain from his voyages with tales of a fabulous but as yet undiscovered kingdom called El Dorado. Balboa was one of the first adventurers to come in search of Columbus's land of gold, and he had decided from the beginning that he would be the one to find it. Through sheer audacity and single mindedness, and we touched on that in the very last law, he acted boldly, very single mindedly, and very boldly. Now that he was free of his creditors, nothing would stop him. Boldly and brashly. Oh, hello, Bijou on the Rumble side. So you gotta love that. Oh, dear goodness, in my infinite wisdom and button clicking, that was not what I meant to do. I done closed out of the damn book like an idiot. Sorry, y'all. Switching between tabs, like trying to check everything, because I haven't set up a dual monitor setup just yet for this. I really ought to, though, if I'm going to do Rumble and YouTube. Until StreamYards integrates both of them, at least. Son of a bitch. Hold, please. Should have planned ahead. Yep, I did not have a plan for this. Maybe I should have had another copy of the book open. That would have been a plan for this failure. Well, well pointed out, Bijou. Unfortunately, the ship's owner, a wealthy jurist named Francisco Fernandez de Inciso, was furious when told of the stowaway, and he ordered that Balboa be left on the first island they came across. Before they found any island, however, Enciso received news that the colony he was to rescue had been abandoned. This was Balboa's chance. He told the sailors of his previous voyages to Panama and of the rumors he had heard of gold in the area. You're violating law number 4, my guy. The excited sailors convinced Enciso to spare Balboa's life and to establish a colony in Panama. Weeks later, they named their new settlement Darien. Darien's first governor was Enciso, but Balboa was not a man to let others steal the initiative, because he's a bold gentleman. He campaigned against Enciso among the sailors, who eventually made it clear that they preferred him as governor. Enciso fled to Spain, fearing for his life. Months later, when a representative of the Spanish crown arrived to establish himself as the new official governor of Darien, he was turned away. On his return voyage to Spain, this man drowned. The drowning was accidental, but under Spanish law, Balboa had murdered the governor and usurped his position. Ugh, that's that's kind of a bad law. Oh shit! I forgot to put the damn thing back up on the damn stage. I'm not rereading all of that, y'all. Sorry. I'm not. Uh, but yeah, Balboa seems like he's kind of in a fucked situation now, just a little bit. Balboa's bravado had got him out of scrapes before, but now his hopes of wealth and glory seemed doomed. To lay claim to El Dorado, should he discover it, he would need the approval of the Spanish king, which, as an outlaw, he would never receive. There was only one solution. Panamanian Indians had told Balboa of a vast ocean on the other side of the Central American Isthmus and had said that by traveling south upon this western coast, he would reach a fabulous land of gold, called by a name that to his ears sounded like Biru. Balboa decided that he would cross the treacherous jungles of Panama and become the first European to bathe his feet in this new ocean. From there, he would march on El Dorado. If he did this on Spain's behalf, he would obtain the eternal gratitude of the king and would secure his own reprieve. Only he had to act before Spanish authorities came to arrest him. Okay, so yeah, the official Spanish governor that the king sent to go ahead and claim control of this place was sent away and he drowned on his way back home. Allegedly, accidentally, wink wink, nudge nudge. So clearly, obviously, he was murdered, right? Like we all agree that this unnamed Spanish governor was he he killed him, right? Like he didn't just turn him away. Why would he do that? But our man Balboa is now like on a time crunch with he's got a plan, right? Like it looks like he's even got an ending to his plan, right? To go ahead and conquer this land of Biru. I mean, it is a little hubristic to think that he was the first European to bathe his feet in the Pacific Ocean, because that's the ocean they're referring to. I don't actually know if that's historically accurate or not, but I mean, he's got a he's got a really sketchy plan. A man, a plan, a pan, a man, a mania. Panamania indeed. In 1513, then, Balboa set out with 190 soldiers. Halfway across the isthmus, some 90 miles wide at that point, only 60 soldiers remained. So he started with 190, and halfway through, we're down to 60. Many having succumbed to the harsh conditions, the blood sucking insects, malaria mosquitoes, the torrential rainfall, fever. Finally, from a mountaintop, Balboa became the first European to lay eyes on the Pacific Ocean. So this is sounding like he might actually achieve this dream and on record, like first European on record. Hello, small mousin. A man, a plan, Panama. Is it a palindrome? You're the poet here. Okay, not much going on the Rumble side. Shout out to the 10 people watching over on the Rumble side, though. We got what appears to be a little bit closer of a split on numbers today because we're 10 and 10. I think you might have left a word out of the palindrome, which is why it didn't make sense to me. But a man, a plan, a canal, Panama. Yeah, there we go. That's uh, we'll get there. We will get there. So he's at the top of a mountain, and he's the first one to, on record, to lay eyes on the Pacific Ocean. Days later, he marched in his armor into its waters, bearing the banner of Castile and claiming all its seas, lands, and islands in the name of the Spanish throne. We're getting a little bit more so with the hubris. Look to the end. No matter what it is you are considering, often enough, God gives a man a glimpse of happiness, then utterly destroys him. The histories of Herodotus. Indians from the area greeted Balboa with gold, jewels, and precious pearls, the like of which he had never seen. When he asked where these had come from, the Indians pointed south to the land of the Incas. But Balboa had only a few soldiers left. For the moment, he decided he should return to Darien, send the jewels and gold to Spain as a token of goodwill, and ask for a large army to aid him in the conquest of El Dorado. When news reached Spain of Balboa's bold crossing of the isthmus, his discovery of the Western Ocean, and his planned conquest of El Dorado, the former criminal became a hero. He was instantly proclaimed governor of the new land, but before the king and queen received word of his discovery, they had already sent a dozen ships under the command of a man named Pedro Arias Davila Pedrarias, with orders to arrest Balboa for murder and to take command of the colony. By the time Pedrarias arrived in Panama, he had learned that Balboa had been pardoned and that he was to share the governorship with the former outlaw. And thus again, our man Balboa's plan is being altered. They are altering the deal. Pray they do not alter it any further. Mm, I'm just going to start saying I was the first to do all stuff and lay claim to it. I mean, you can't lay claim to invention of the internet. That was Al Gore. You can't lay claim to be the first football team with 1,000 wins. That was the University of Michigan. But other than that, like, go knock yourself out. Just lay claim to everything. See what sticks. All the same, Balboa felt uneasy. Gold was his dream. El Dorado his only desire. So he didn't really want to be the governor. He wanted the city of gold. In pursuit of this goal, he had nearly died many times over, and to share the wealth and glory with a newcomer would be intolerable. He also soon discovered that Petrarius was a jealous, bitter man and equally unhappy with the situation. Once again, the only solution for Balboa was to seize the initiative by proposing to cross the jungle with a larger army carrying shipbuilding materials and tools. Once on the Pacific coast, he would create an armada with which to conquer the Incas. Surprisingly enough, Pedrarius agreed to the plan, perhaps sensing it would never work. Hundreds died in this second march through the jungle. The timber they carried rotted in the torrential rains. Balboa, as usual, was undaunted. No power in the world could thwart his plan. Hold on, time out, Balboa. The fuck kind of plan is this? This is not a plan at all. This is not that kind of lesson. First shot. We're talking about something completely different here. No, they didn't gloss over it. They completely left it out. There was no glossing over that at all. It was completely excluded from the telling of the recollection here. It's not part of the plan. Speaking of plan, the fuck kind of plan was this? You've already marched through this once before. You almost died multiple times that go around. You've almost died repeatedly. So, what the fuck made you think that this was going to work? And on arriving at the Pacific Ocean, he began to cut down trees for new lumber. But the men remaining to him were too few and too weak to mount an invasion, and once again, Balboa had to return to Darien. So all that work for that little attempt completely wasted. Shit plan failure number 2. Statistically, he should have been happy to have survived the malaria because the first go round, pretty much nobody survived, and the second go round, pretty much nobody survived. This is sounding like a really shitty plan, my dude. Pedrarius had, in any case, invited Balboa back to discuss a new plan, and on the outskirts of the settlement, the explorer was met by Francisco Pizarro, an old friend who had accompanied him on his first crossing of the isthmus. But this was a trap. Leading 100 soldiers, Pizarro surrounded his former friend, arrested him, and returned him to Pedrarius, who tried him on charges of rebellion. A few days later, Balboa's head fell into a basket, along with those of his most trusted followers. Years later, Pizarro himself reached Peru, and Balboa's deeds were forgotten entirely. Sup, Frogget? Spamming with the good vibes in the chat. So, this guy, he didn't have a very good plan for any of this shit. And thus, with half baked plans all the way through, succeeded in failing miserably every time, and ultimately being undone by his greed and his ambition and his boldness. Oddly enough, because you can't just be bold all the fucking time, like they said the last law we talked about. It's not a useful approach in every undertaking. I actually did want to read this little parable here from the Caravan of Dreams called The King, the Sufi, and the Surgeon. In ancient times, a king of Tartary was out walking with some of his noblemen. At the roadside was an Abdal, a wandering Sufi, who cried out, "Whoever will give me 100 dinars, I will give him some good advice." The king stopped and said, "Abdal, what is this good advice for 100 dinars?" "Sir," answered the Abdal, "order the sum to be given to me, and I will tell you immediately." The king did so, expecting to hear something extraordinary. The dervish said to him, "My advice is this: never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." At this, the nobles and everyone else present laughed, saying that the Abdal had been wise to ask for his money in advance. But the king said, "You have no reason to laugh at the good advice this Abdal has given me. No one is unaware of the fact that we should think well before doing anything, but we are daily guilty of not remembering, and the consequences are evil. I very much value this dervish's advice." The king decided to bear the advice always in his mind, and commanded it to be written in gold on the walls and even engraved on his silver plate. Not long afterward, a plotter desired to kill the king. He bribed the royal surgeon with a promise of the prime ministership if he thrust a poisoned lancet into the king's arm. When the time came to let some of the king's blood, a silver basin was placed to catch the blood. Suddenly, the surgeon became aware of the words engraved upon it: "Never begin anything until you have reflected what will be the end of it." It was only then that he realized that if the plotter became king, he could have the surgeon killed instantly and would not need to fulfill his bargain. The king, seeing that the surgeon was now trembling, asked him what was wrong with him, and so he confessed the truth at that very moment. The plotter was seized, and the king sent for all the people who had been present when the Abdal gave his advice, and said to them, "Do you still laugh at the dervish?" And I wanted to read that one because that, actually did give a really good insight as to why you would want to plan ahead for things like this. Oh, hey, Shill. Welcome to my library, I guess. Oh, that's a good way to put it, at least on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We turn the we turn the library into a rave bar on the weekends, but uh, that's usually only on the Rumble side. But I mean, I thought that was really poignant because had the king not took that advice so to heart and had it inscribed all over the place, the surgeon probably would not have had that moment of clarity and thinking, and him and the king both like dead in the next scene. So you really got to be like be careful with your plots and your schemes. Oh my goodness! Now what? I think it might be time to get a new mouse. I'm having random ghost clicks, and this is not cool. But yeah, I just wanted to share that one. Before we got to the interpretation of Balboa, most men are ruled by the heart, not the head. Yes, people generally emotional creatures. They're reactive and they're brash. I'm resting, taking it easy, probably going to fall asleep. Well, plan that all the way to the end. If you fall asleep, then you'll miss the ending of the law. Think that all the way through. Their plans are vague, and when they meet obstacles, they improvise, as you are not always going to be able to account for everything with planning, no matter how good you are at it. It's just prac- practically impossible. But improvisation will only bring you as far as the next crisis and is never a substitute for thinking several steps ahead and planning to the end. It's like playing chess. You know what your goal is, and then you think several steps ahead, planning moves, planning counter moves to your opponent's most likely moves. It really is like that's what strategic games are all about, and that's what strategic undertakings are all about. Oh, son of a bitch! How is that empty? Uh, Balboa had a dream of glory and wealth and a vague plan to reach it. Yet his bold deeds and his discovery of the Pacific are largely forgotten. For he committed what in the world of power is the ultimate sin. He went part way, leaving the door open for others to take over. Now, I don't know if this is in one of the laws we've already covered or if it's in one that we have yet to cover that I noticed it in my skimming, but never ever go halfway. Go all the way or not at all. This is very critical because of shit like this. A real man of power would have had the prudence to see the dangers in the distance. The rivals who would want to share in the conquests, the vultures that would hover once they heard the word gold. Balboa should have kept his knowledge of the Incas secret until after he conquered Peru. But how are you going to sell people on wanting to back you on conquering Peru if you don't reveal why you want to conquer it. He didn't have a plan for any of this shit. Only then would his wealth and his head have been secure. Once Pedrarius arrived on the scene, a man of power and prudence would have schemed to kill or imprison him and to take over the army he had brought for the conquest of Peru. But Balboa was locked in the moment, always reacting emotionally, never thinking ahead. His entire freaking plan. You grew up learning about Balboa, which is more than I can say about most people from his time period. Yeah, I mean, it's weird the things like out of all the history, the things that each generation is selected to learn, like, because there's more history than your school could have ever taught you. But the shit that they select as important and relevant, I find that fascinating. That's a completely different conversation. Let's peek over at Rumble. Okay, people just hanging out over there. No, nobody chatting really too much. What good is it to have the greatest dream in the world if others reap the benefits and the glory? Never lose your head, get it, over a vague, open ended dream. Plan to the end. Yeah, it's pretty impressive to me that somebody who bumbled this as hard as Balboa did actually ended up with any notoriety or historical reference whatsoever because he's the guy who botched getting to El Dorado. Observance of the law. In 1863, the Prussian premier Otto von Bismarck surveyed the chessboard of European power as it then stood. The main players were England, France, and Austria. Prussia itself was one of several states in the loosely allied German Federation. Austria, dominant member of the Federation, made sure that the other German states remained weak, divided, and submissive. Bismarck believed that Prussia was destined for something far greater than servant boy to Austria. This is how Bismarck played the game. His first move was to start a war with lowly Denmark in order to recover the former Prussian lands of Schleswig Holstein. He knew that these rumblings of Prussian independence might worry France and England, so he enlisted Austria in the war, claiming that he was recovering Schleswig Holstein for their benefit. In a few months after the war was decided, Bismarck demanded that the newly conquered lands be made part of Prussia. The Austrians, of course, were furious, but they compromised. First, they agreed to give the Prussians Schleswig, and a year later, they sold them Holstein. The world began to see that Austria was weakening and that Prussia was on the rise. Okay, so our man Bismarck, von Bismarck here has got a plan. It seems. It sounds better if you are all. It always sounds better if you are liberating people. I mean, depending on who you're trying to sell the arguments to. But yeah, in general, people like soft language. People like euphemisms. People don't like harsh realities of the truth. And at the time, you might even believe that to be true. It's only in the aftermath of the atrocities that you see them for what they truly are. Balboa is a place in Spain too with a nice castle. Yeah, I'm assuming like Balboa is a more common name in Spain and in South America than it is here. Bismarck's next move was his boldest. In 1866, he convinced King William of Prussia to withdraw from the German Federation and in doing so to go to war with Austria itself. Uh, didn't we just say something about acting boldly? King William's wife, his son the Crown Prince, and the princes of the other German kingdoms vehemently opposed such a war. But Bismarck, undaunted, succeeded in forcing the conflict, and Prussia's superior army defeated the Austrians in the brutally short 7 weeks war. Imagine being the dominant power of your loose federation and getting your ass kicked in 7 weeks. The king and the Prussian generals then wanted to march on Vienna, taking as much land from Austria as possible, but Bismarck stopped them. Now, he presented himself as on the side of peace. The result was that he was able to conclude a treaty with Austria that granted Prussia and the other German states total autonomy. Bismarck could now position Prussia as the dominant power in Germany and the head of a newly formed North German Confederation. There is a plan here. Does anybody see it just yet? Happy New Year, Texas Jen. And good evening to you and welcome. Welcome to the party that is the return of the 48 Laws. Now on YouTube and Rumble. So smash that like button on both platforms. Ye bigots. Ye of little faith. Does anybody see what my man's is planning here? Canada? First shot? No, first shot's not a Canadian. I would never ever associate with a Canadian. Canadians are sick creatures. They're they need help. Canada needs help. They need to be annexed before before they embrace the new Swiss pods. The French and the English began to compare Bismarck to Attila the Hun and to fear that he had designs on all of Europe. Once he had started on the path to conquest, there was no telling where he would stop. And indeed, 3 years later, Bismarck provoked a war with France. Okay, so let's follow the path so far. The first thing Bismarck does when he gets power is he provokes a war, provokes, mind you, with Denmark to fight for the lands of Schleswig Holstein and to reclaim them and to make them part of Prussia. Done and dusted. He enlisted Austria's help to get that done. The next thing he does is he turns on Austria and basically slaps the hell out of them. Austria being the big superpower in the German Federation. Basically reforms the German Federation. And remember at the beginning of the story when he was looking at this chessboard and he saw that England and France and Austria were the three big players? He escalates again and he slaps France. Funny that you would mention that. 1870 would be post Napoleon, wouldn't it? First, he appeared to give his permission to France's annexation of Belgium. Then, at the last moment, he changed his mind. Playing a cat and mouse game, he infuriated the French Emperor Napoleon III. So, yes, past the time of that Napoleon, the one you're thinking of, but this is still Napoleon. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Asterisk noted. And stirred up his own kingdom against the French. To no one's surprise, war broke out in 1870. The newly formed German Federation enthusiastically joined in on the war on France because nobody likes the French. I mean, if I'd have been a German Federationist in the 1870s, I'd have enthusiastically joined in on the war on the French too. Fuck them. And once again, the Prussian military machine and its allies destroyed the enemy army in a matter of months. So these guys were not just ruthless, but they were efficient. Although Bismarck opposed taking any French land, the generals convinced him that Alsace-Lorraine would become part of the Federation. Now, all of Europe feared the next move of the Prussian monster led by Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor. And, in fact, a year later, Bismarck founded the German Empire with the Prussian king as the newly crowned emperor and Bismarck himself a prince. But then something strange happened. Bismarck instigated no more wars. And while the other European powers grabbed up land for colonies on other continents, he severely limited Germany's colonial acquisitions. He did not want more land for Germany, but more security. For the rest of his life, he struggled to maintain peace in Europe and to prevent further wars. Everybody assumed he had changed, mellowing with the years. They had failed to understand this was the final move of his original plan. He who asks fortune tellers the future unwittingly forfeits an inner intimation of coming events that is 1,000 times more exact than anything they may say. Walter Benjamin. So, that was the plan. Bingo. Nailed it. Absolutely. Nailed it. Quit while you're ahead. The second thing to be done is to remember what year it is. 2024, the year of the dragon. Oh, I'm not sure what Chinese prophecy has to do with anything. Maybe you can explain, Squab, while we get into this interpretation. There is a simple reason why most men never know when to come off the attack. They form no concrete idea of their goal. Once they achieve victory, they only hunger for more. To stop, to aim for a goal, and then keep to it seems almost inhuman. And this is something I was referencing earlier when you think about the ambitious men of our time. And I use the example of the big three. Bill Gates made it rich, founding Microsoft. He built an empire. His goal, his stated goal, was to put a PC in every household in America. He has put a PC or more in almost every household on the planet at this point. But he didn't stop there. He didn't let building the most powerful computer empire in modern times like that wasn't enough for him. Bezos with Amazon creating an empire, not enough for him. Elon Musk with Tesla, even after the whole failed PayPal thing. Accidentally lucky, but overly ambitious. They have no clear they have no clear end to their ambitions. And it does seem to lead to all things evil in all regards. A lot of people step up and defend Gates, and a lot of people will step up and defend Musk. A lot of people will step up and defend Bezos, but that's a conversation for another time. Their uncheckable ambition, that's 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 not up for debate. Like they don't know when to stop. Most people don't. In fact, yet nothing is more critical to the maintenance of power. The person who goes too far in his triumphs creates a reaction that inevitably leads to a decline. The only solution is to plan for the long run. Foresee the future with as much clarity as the gods on Mount Olympus, who look through the clouds and see the ends of all things. From the beginning of his career in politics, Bismarck had one goal: to form an independent German state led by Prussia. He instigated the war with Denmark not to conquer territory, but to stir up Prussian nationalism and unite the country. He incited the war with Austria only to gain Prussian independence. This was why he refused to grab Austrian territory. and he fomented the war with France to unite the German kingdoms against a common enemy and thus to prepare for the formation of a united Germany. Once this was achieved, Bismarck stopped. He never let triumph go to his head. He was never tempted by the siren call of war. He held the reins tightly, and whenever the generals, or the king, or the Prussian people demanded new conquests, he held them back. Nothing would spoil the beauty of his creation. Certainly not a false euphoria that pushed those around him to attempt to go past the end that he had so carefully planned. Experience shows us that if one foresees from far away the designs to be undertaken, one can act with speed when the moment comes to execute them. Cardinal Richelieu. Now, I didn't know this story before I read this chapter. Wasn't familiar with the Prussian led German Federation pre World War One. It's a shame what happened to Bismarck's beautiful vision in the long run. But that's the problem with the best laid plans is eventually you die and someone else takes over. But for his time, like he executed perfectly and then he stopped the moment he achieved his actual end goal. He saw an end goal, a united Germany, and when he got it, he pushed it not a bit further. Rome could have learned a lesson, and Rome could may have been like an empire for years beyond years that they were. Inya, hey, good to see you. And if you think about like all the expansion of all the great empires, I mean, look at us right now. We keep meddling in all types of foreign business and fuckery, shit that shouldn't concern us, but the ambitious people with influence and interest get to dictate the terms, not regular people who have to pay for it, whether with their gold or with their blood. I'm looking at you, Zelensky. I'm looking at you, Netanyahu. We see you out here, my guys. We notice. Keys to power. According to the cosmology of the ancient Greeks, the gods were thought to have complete vision into the future. They saw everything to come, right down to the intricate details. Men, on the other hand, were seen as victims of fate, trapped in the moment and their emotions, unable to see beyond immediate dangers. Well, not just immediate dangers, but immediate gratification as well. I mean, nations are constantly changing, lines on the map constantly being withdrawn, uh, and we're not just way too young, but we have no plan. We have no real good plan, and that's what this whole thing is like denoting here is what happens to people with a lack of a plan. Those heroes, such as Odysseus, were able to look beyond the present and plan several steps ahead, playing chess, not checkers, as the saying goes. Seemed to defy fate, to approximate the gods in their ability to determine the future, the comparison is still valid. Those among us who think further ahead and patiently bring their plans to fruition seem to have a godlike power. I mean, that's why when people tell me, well, everyone else is playing checkers and a certain DJ T, the 45, is playing 4D chess, I just laugh hysterically at this point. Because if you've listened to what's going on, it's clear that everybody in the room is playing like Parcheesi and nobody knows the fucking rules. Like, there's nobody playing 4D chess here. Nobody. And if they are, they're doing a really good job of making it look like they're a bunch of bumbling, incompetent buffoons. Oh, well, sure. Yeah, that's not a fair comparison. It's really not. Because that's not what I was getting at, is he's not playing 4D chess. He doesn't have a fucking plan. He's not the fucking answer to this problem because he never was. Because no matter who you put in that chair, they can't be the fucking answer to this problem. They can't have a plan for it because they because of the nature of what the problem actually is. It can't be fixed from the top down. It's a fundamental bottom up fucking problem. Because most people are too imprisoned in the moment to plan with this kind of foresight, the ability to ignore immediate dangers and pleasures translates into power. Has anyone ever heard of the rule of delayed gratification? That's what this is. It is being willing to put off gratification now for your greater plan. And a lot of times, to execute a plan of any great significance, it's like doing a heist. Yeah, it's like doing a con. Like, you could do the short con and you could get away with a little bit, but if you build like a trust with someone, you play the long con, you can take exponentially more. And I know cons and politicians and a lot of this gets used in reference to this power, which gives this book such a negative connotation. But I think that is why I've been so effed up, because I agree, if the system isn't afraid of its people, well, the people need to remind them that there's some planning here that needs to be done. My man, Mr. Kennedy, he put it the best, and so that I can keep it PC, he said, anyone who makes peaceful revolution impossible makes violent revolution inevitable. Food for thought. That's just food for thought at this point. But I mean, I guess I gotta remind them. Okay, where were we? Because most people are too imprisoned in the moment to plan with this kind of foresight, the ability to ignore immediate dangers and pleasures translates into power. It is the power of being able to overcome the natural human tendency to react to things as they happen, and instead of to train oneself to step back, imagining the larger things taking shape beyond one's immediate vision. This is a little tactic. My man Jocko Willink, I don't know if anyone's familiar, but he has a podcast, Jocko Podcast, and he calls uh, this stepping back, this detachment. Um, what is the exact? There is a turn of phrase that he uses, and I absolutely love it. but it is 100% like a necessary thing to do to uh step out of to step back and focus out of the minute and on the bigger picture. I'm gonna be covering some things from Jocko here soon on my Rumble channel, so uh I would have done better to have better notes on that one. But yeah, it's been a while for me too, although he put out the DEF clips, and I'm gonna get into the DEF clips because I have some thoughts on some things in there. Imagining the larger things taking shape beyond one's immediate vision, most people believe that they are in fact aware of the future, that they are planning and thinking ahead. They are usually deluded. What they are really doing is succumbing to their desires, to what they want the future to be. And this is something I've noticed with a great number of people on a great number of topics. I ask them when we're talking about things about how things are, and they respond so frequently, conflating how they believe things ought to be with how they are. And when I say, no, this thing doesn't work like that, the cognitive dissonance is like, well, that's what papers say. And it's like, yeah, well, the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution says shall not be infringed. But is that what our Second Amendment functionally means in society? No, because infringement is fucking rampant, even to like it's been rampant for years and years and years. That they've been degrading and degrading and degrading it. So it's like, what does the Second Amendment functionally mean? It's a kind of a bastardized version of what it used to mean, kind of like the First Amendment, you know. And then I get into such a gripe of just people not being able to accept situations as they are. They look at the future that they envision as ideal without considering like the actions to bring about the future that they want ideal and what the consequences of those are. We're heading on that path right now because the people in charge have this ideal vision of this utopian hellscape that they want to implement on all of us. They're not shy about it. They talk about it at length, but their plan is so shit. It's like, well, do you understand the consequences of this? Yes, we don't care. Okay, tell me how that works out for you. I'll see you in the wasteland. Succumbing to their desires to what they want the future to be. Their plans are vague, based on their imaginations rather than their reality. They may believe they are thinking all the way to the end, but they are really only focusing on the happy ending and deluding themselves by the strength of their desire. In 415 BC, the ancient Athenians attacked Sicily, believing their expedition would bring them riches, power, and a glorious ending to the 16-year Peloponnesian War. They did not consider the dangers of an invasion so far from home. They did not foresee that the Sicilians would fight all the harder since the battles were in their own homeland, or that all of Athens' enemies would band together against them, or that the war would break out on several fronts, stretching their forces way too thin. The Sicilian expedition was a complete disaster, leading to the destruction of one of the greatest civilizations of all time. The Athenians were led into this disaster by their hearts, not their minds. They saw only the chance of glory, not the dangers that loomed in the distance. Cardinal de Retz, the 17th century Frenchman, who prided himself on his insights into human schemes and why they mostly fail, analyzed this phenomenon. In the insights in the course of a rebellion, he spearheaded against the French monarchy in 1651. The young king Louis XIV and his court had suddenly left Paris and established themselves in a palace outside the capital. The presence of the king so close to the heart of the revolution had been a tremendous burden on the revolutionaries, and they breathed a sigh of relief. This later proved their downfall, however, since the court's absence from Paris gave it much more room to maneuver. The more ordinary cause of people's mistakes, Cardinal de Retz later wrote, is their being too much frightened at the present danger and not enough so at that which is remote. The dangers that are remote, that loom in the distance, if we can see them as they take shape, how many mistakes we avoid. How many plans would instantly abort if we realized we were avoiding a small danger only to step into a larger one? Yep. When you can't see the forest for the trees, what you may think is a very well laid plan maybe is shooing you straight into the jaws of disaster. What's up, Castro? I see you over there on the dark side. The French elections of 1848 came down to a struggle between Louis Adolphe, Louis Adolphe Thiers, a man of order, and General Louis Eugene Cavaignac, the rabble rouser of the right. When Thiers realized he was hopelessly behind in this high stakes race, he searched desperately for a solution. His eye fell on Louis Bonaparte, grandnephew of the great General Napoleon, and a lowly deputy in the Parliament. This Bonaparte seemed a bit of an imbecile, but his name alone could get him elected in a country yearning for a strong ruler. Stop me, my friends, if you've heard this story recently. This Bonaparte Biden seemed a bit of an imbecile, but his name alone could get him elected. I mean, not in a country yearning for a strong ruler, but in a country yearning for absolute retardation at this point. He would be Thayer's puppet and eventually would be pushed off stage. Does this sound like a story you've heard before? The first part of the plan worked to perfection, and Napoleon was elected by a large margin. The problem was that Thayers had not foreseen one simple fact. This imbecile was in fact a man of enormous ambition. 3 years later, he dissolved Parliament, declared himself emperor, and ruled France for another 18 years, much to the horror of Thers and his party. Oofed! You forgot to vet the man who you were going to use as your puppet. Now look at him, he's destroying everything. He's declared himself emperor and suspended elections. Please, stop me if you've heard this one. The ending is everything. It is the end of the action that determines who gets the glory, the money, the prize. Your conclusions must be crystal clear, and you must keep it constantly in mind. You must also figure out how to ward off the vultures circling overhead, trying to live off the carcass of your creation. And you must anticipate the many possible crises that will tempt you to improvise. Bismarck overcame these dangers because he planned to the end, kept on course through every crisis, and never let others steal the glory. Once he reached his stated goal, he withdrew into his shell like a turtle. This kind of self control is godlike, and I'm starting to think we're abusing the term godlike, but it is incredibly rare. And I think that is the point that he is trying to make here is to just quell your ambitions when you're on the rise and to, as Firsty put it earlier, quit while you're ahead. You just don't see it. That is why there are so few historical references to people who knew when to just sit the fuck down and accept victory. I'm talking about us right now, the United States. We can't seem to accept defeat in places like Afghanistan and Ukraine. How the fuck could we ever accept victory if we were winning? When you see several steps ahead and plan your moves all the way to the end, you will no longer be tempted by emotion or by the desire to improvise. Your clarity will rid you of the anxiety and vagueness that are the primary reasons why so many fail to conclude their actions successfully. You see the ending and you tolerate no deviation. Image: the gods on Mount Olympus looking down on human actions from the clouds. They see in advance the endings of all the great dreams that lead to disaster and tragedy. And they laugh at our inability to see beyond the moment and at how we delude ourselves. Authority. How much easier it is never to get in than to get yourself out. We should act contrary to the reed which, when it first appears, throws up a long straight stem, but afterwards, as though it were exhausted, makes several dense knots, indicating that it no longer has its own vigor and drive. We must rather begin gently and coolly, saving our breath for the encounter and our vigorous thrusts for finishing off the job. In their beginnings, it is we who guide affairs and hold them in our power. But so often, once they are set in motion, it is they which guide us and sweep us along. Montaigne. Taft. You guys had Taft. We had Ford. How do you like that? Okay, we have a history lesson going on here in the chat. It looks like Firsty is telling a story. My understanding is they would later also offer the title of emperor to the Marquis de Lafayette. Uh, I speak no French, so Spain would be my preference, but my father-in-law is French, so father-in-law, you're married? Oh God, that poor woman. My grandmother-in-law is French and had Nazis occupy her home as a young girl. She hates Germans and isn't very fond of Spaniards either. Old people are incredibly racist. uh, and French people are just intolerable in general. So, uh, on behalf of Americans, we don't like the French or the Canadians, especially the French Canadians. Let's hit this reversal, y'all. It is a cliche among strategists that your plan must include alternatives and have a degree of flexibility. Plan A, Plan B, etc. Contingencies are not a bad thing to have. They're a terrible thing to become too dependent on. Because the more you have to divert to your contingency plans, the further away from your primary plan you get. This is why improvising leads to destruction if you do too much of it. That is certainly true. If you are locked into a plan too rigidly, you will be unable to deal with sudden shifts of fortune. Once you have examined the future possibilities and decided on your target, you must build in alternatives and be open to new routes towards your goal. Most people, however, lose less from over planning and rigidity than from vagueness and a tendency to improvise constantly in the face of circumstance. There is no real purpose in contemplating a reversal to this law, then, for no good can come from refusing to think far into the future and planning to the end. If you are clear and far thinking enough, you will understand that the future is uncertain and that you must be open to adaptation. Only having a clear objective and a far reaching plan allows you that freedom. You got me? Plan all the way to the end. Be willing to flex your plan when necessary, but do not get away from your plan. And make sure you have a plan with good concrete checkpoints that you can get back to in anything. I was doing dishes. I haven't met many French people. No French Canadians. The only ones I liked were, I'm not saying that, we're on YouTube still. Silly. Oh, darn it. This time I didn't actually remove it all the way. That was Law 29. We made it all the way to the end. That was my plan. Just in case any of you were wondering. Oh, Cajuns. I gotcha. Yeah, those are like a different kind of French people. The Bayou folk. Oh yeah, because you're from Florida. That's right. You would know the Bayou folk, not the other weird French people. No, it's not the other word. It's the other word. That's actually a racial slur. Because I can't say that term without saying the other one, and that one's a racial slur. I'm pretty sure. And I'm not. Yeah. Until I'm ready to get away from YouTube. Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not. I ain't tripping. We made it to the end. We got the plan accomplished. I am sort of defensive of my YouTube channel. I wouldn't want to nuke it for no reason because of stupid racisms and shit. I like what we're doing here in Darth's extension of the library, which is basically my own little reading club. Uh, any thoughts, y'all, on planning? Hey, look, this is Shilomania loose on the Rumble side. Hi there, Charlemania. This is a good little balance. I got 10 people still watching on YouTube. I've got 11 people still watching on Rumble. I'm sure several of these people are the same people, so I feel like I have inflated numbers. Uh, this one was a good one. I think I liked the boldness law more, but I mean, not all of them can be the most fun in the world. Ooh, that's going to be a fun one. Next, uh, on Friday, we're going to hit Law 30. Make your accomplishments seem effortless. Which, I mean, it feels like it's been effortless. We're already to 30 out of 48. So, um, noon o'clock, early show on Friday. We'll be doing Law 30, and I will show you all just how effortless this really is. Anyone have any opinions on what we talked about earlier about Monday's show? Like, because I could do it earlier in the afternoon as long as I'm done by 7:30, or I could do it on Tuesday in the evening. I could do it late at night if y'all were down for that, but show's already pretty freaking late for some people. Do it after the game, like we did the last one. Just schedule it for very late this time. The problem with doing it after the game is I like to schedule it for a time, and I don't know if the game will be over for when I schedule it for. Do it when it suits me, but I want some input on like what people would prefer. So I guess I'll just put the uh it would be really cool if that guy could keep my fucking name out of his mouth like he knows me or knows anything about me. Like seriously. But I tend to live rent free in that kid's head, so oh, are you? I wouldn't be surprised at this point, like good. Anywho, I'll catch you guys Friday if nobody has anything more about the plan. But if you do, as always, y'all, the comment section is open for discussion. I appreciate all feedback and input. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts, or maybe things I haven't thought of in regards to planning, like drop whatever you've got on your mind. I will respond in the comments appropriately, accordingly. And if nothing further, I will love to see all of you back here at noon. I understand that it's a different time frame entirely, and some people can't make it. But that's why I like to break up the times because there's some people who can't make this late show. So I like to do the Friday streams so that I can get to the people who are there for the earlier shows. All right, y'all. I will see everyone who can make it Friday. If not, I will keep you posted on what my plans are for the first show of next week, and we'll see whether or not I'm doing it. I probably will do it earlier in the afternoon on Monday. That's what I'm leaning towards personally, unless I get a overwhelming push to do it on Tuesday. That's probably like I don't really want to stay up super freaking late and do it, so that's kind of an out idea. But yeah, either earlier on Monday or doing it on Tuesday. That'll be one or the other. I will catch you guys then. Well, I will catch you Friday either way. I don't know if we're doing anything crazy on the Rumble side once we put the books away and grab the drinking glasses for this weekend, so I'll have to keep you posted on that, but stay tuned, y'all. It's getting exciting in here. Thank you all for coming. I love each and every one of you. Don't forget to hit that like button or the dislike button on your way out. However you felt about it, I don't really. Uh, all opinions are valid here, and I will catch you guys Friday. Hideous. Hold on. Hideous out.